And we're back on the Fowler Show, and we're talking about House Republicans. Yes, indeed, it is true. Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee voted Monday to release a memo that paints the FBI and the Justice Department as being biased against President Trump. The memo, written by Republican Representative Devin Nunes, frames Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation as an FBI effort to hurt Trump. Let's talk through this insane new Republican conspiracy theory. So depending upon when you watch this video, to be very, very frank and forward with you, because this story is literally moving, right? So here's what we know so far. This memo is now at the White House. And let's take a listen to what the president said during his State of the Union about said memo.
Let's release the memo. Oh, yeah. Oh, don't worry. 100%. Can you imagine that?
Yes, sir.
Last year, he'd be too angry.
How you doing?
How's it going?
So it seems as though the president plans on releasing this memo with the objection of his new FBI director, who we found out moments before taping the show, released a letter indicating this memo should not be released and saying if it is released, there's classified information in it, blah, 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 blah. On top of that, the Association of FBI Agents, so that's all the field agents, all the agents across the country, has also released a letter indicating how damaging to the FBI's work releasing this memo could be. President Trump is dead set on releasing this memo, and this memo will likely be released Friday, February 2nd. Here are the ramifications of this. Now remember, the Intelligence Committee in the House of Representatives voted along party lines to release this memo. They also voted along party lines to block the release of a Democratic rebuttal to this memo. Now let's dig even deeper. This memo is based on classified information. The classified information is not in the memo. It's based on classified information, and this memo was the classified information this memo is based off has actually not been seen by the chairman himself, Devin Nunes. Devin Nunes, the chairman of this committee, outsourced the writing of this memo and the researching of this memo to 2 Intelligence Committee staffers. So let me continue. So let's follow this on. So the person that we elected to be the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee pawned off his responsibility to 2 lay staffers who work at his discretion and at his will to go to the FBI, look at some classified information, and come up with a memo. And this memo, very obviously, only is there for one particular reason: to taint the Mueller investigation as it steams forward. Remember that we are now at a point in the Mueller investigation where the National Security Advisor has been indicted and has pled guilty to charges and is now helping the special counsel get to the bottom of the Russia investigation. The former chairman of the Trump campaign, Paul Manafort, has been indicted. Paul Manafort's buddy has been indicted. George Papadopoulos, somebody who said the White House said was a volunteer, who was in meetings with the president, was in high-level foreign policy talks, has also been indicted and pled guilty to lying to an agent of the FBI. Almost every single senior official in this White House has been interviewed by the special counsel, including Hope Hicks, the communications director, including the chief of staff, Rance Privis, the former chief of staff, and on and on and on. America. And now Mueller will likely be meeting with the President of the United States, likely on the record, to ask him questions about their involvement with the Russians in this type, in colluding or engage in the Russians' attempt to destroy our democracy and sort of taint this election. What Republicans are trying to do here, is they're trying to cover up for this president. Now, we have not talked about the Russia investigation law on this show. And the reason for that is because it is a very complex thing. But the release of this memo has pushed us here at the Fowler Show for us to cover the release of this memo, because this memo is what I like to call highway propaganda. Or, as they say it, and as the kids say, lies, sex, and videotapes. That is exactly what this is. This is a tainted, partisan written memo that is put out there to basically put a shade on the FBI and the Justice Department. And let's remember who it's coming from. Devin Nunes had to recuse himself from the Russia investigation because he was involved in the Trump inauguration and was at the White House helping them craft a strategy on how to avoid dealing with Robert Mueller. So now let's get this straight. You have President Trump firing James Comey because James Comey was looking into some actions taken by his National Security Advisor, Mike Flynn. He was fired. Then you have Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, recusing himself because he met with the Russian ambassador, Kislyak, and forgot about it. And listen, let me tell you something. If you look at a picture of Kislyak, there's no way you will forget meeting with him. I mean, just listen to him talk. I would never forget a meeting that I had with this man. Just like I will never forget, like, the first time I met Patti LaBelle, and I love Patti. Like, I'll never forget the first time I met her. I will never forget the first time. There's a lot of people I'll never forget the first time I met them. I'm like, oh, like first time I met Chris Matthews, I'll never forget it. And Kislyak just seems to me to be a very memorable person. Just look at him. He's like the Goodyear blimp, the Goodyear marshmallow-looking, what do you guys call it? The little character, right? That's what he looks like. You can't forget Kislyak. Anyway, I digress. Back to this, right? So Nunes' memo says the FBI abused the FISA Act, which is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and basically used this Fusion GPS dossier to basically wiretap Carter Page and wiretap Trump Towers. Now let's talk about that for just a minute. Let's unpack that for a minute. Now, I'm not a big fan of this FISA law because the ideal of a secret court giving out warrants for wiretaps without like, you know, somebody representing the person who's being wiretapped is shocking to me, and it's against our Constitution. But let me also say this, right? The FISA law does provide an outline that would require quite a bit of a conspiracy for this memo to even have some truth to it. So basically what you're saying, what Nunes is saying, let's walk this all out, is somebody came to the FBI, right? The guy from Fusion GPS, the guy from Fusion GPS who wrote the dossier, came to the FBI, handed him this dossier. The FBI took this dossier, then went to a U.S. attorney at the Department of Justice and said, hey, look, I got this dossier. We should use this dossier to get a warrant to tap Carter Page and eventually Trump Tower. And then the two of them said, okay, this is good. And then they went to a courthouse with a FISA judge, and the FISA judge engaged in with just this one piece of evidence, right? Said, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's all work together to defeat Donald Trump. So you have a federal judge appointed by Congress. You have the director of the FBI. You have career U.S. attorneys. And because of the level of what they've asked this FISA to do, I'm pretty sure this went to the highest level of Justice Department. So you have the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, the head of the FBI, all of these agents, and the judge all colluding together in a conspiracy to tap Donald Trump's foreign policy advisor, Carter Page. That doesn't pass the smell test to me. I mean, I'll be real with you. Maybe, I don't like law enforcement like the next guy. So maybe the police officer, FBI agent, they cut along the edges here, cut along the edges there. But then it went to the judge. And the judge just took it. I just don't believe this. Anyway, I digress. It cites the role of Deputy Attorney General Rob Rosenstein, the outgoing Deputy FBI Director, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, in overseeing the aspects of the investigation, according to sources briefed on the matter. Under an obscure committee rule, which is how this is all happening, to make the classified memo public, which has never been invoked, has never invoked in the panel for 40 plus years. The president now has 5 days. He's coming to the end of his 5 days to determine whether or not this should be released. This is all crazy because the president has just appointed a new head of the FBI, Christopher Wray. And Christopher Wray has basically said, Mr. President, you can't release this. This is going to damage the work of my agency that you've basically put me in charge of. So, my prediction here is this. If the president decides to release this memo, I do believe that we'll be looking for a new FBI director in the very near future, because it's impossible for Christopher Wray to do his job when he's being undermined by his boss, the President of the United States. Wray has made his frustration very clear that President Trump has picked him to lead the FBI after firing James Comey, yet his advice on Nunes' memo is being disregarded and casted as part of as sort of this purported partisan attack against the FBI, even though many of these FBI agents care nothing more than protecting American democracy and protecting the American people.